Let's go into these other international stories, because I think they're really important. And in the post game, I want to say that Matt and I are going to spend a little bit of time with a text, a great interview that was in Jacobin this week with former Bolivian vice president, who is one of the great like socialist theorists of our time. And it's going to be definitely it's something that's worthwhile engaging with. This interview, if you haven't had the chance already, and sort of talk about the Bolivian project and what that means for the U.S. left and the kind of lessons that we can learn from that.
Hmm.
But before we wrap up and go to the post game, I wanted to talk a little bit about these elections that are coming up this weekend because they're really important. The first is in Ecuador, which we have talked a lot about on this show. Andreas Arauz, who is a young economist, really brilliant speaker and strategist. He also has some really great interviews that are in Jacobin. Um, is going up against just an archetype of a villain, a super rich banker named Lasso. Um, which is even better in English,
It's
right?
like, look, like I recently, me and my girlfriend are splitting Rosetta Stone, so I'm gonna get back into my Latin American Spanish. But
Hell yeah.
Lasso as a name, just like it's
Yeah.
too perfect. It's like this is I hate to make simulation jokes because Elon Musk has started making those in Silver Passe, but again, like it is very like nominative determinism. I think is the
Yeah.
phrase.
And but I mean, I think it's okay on this level to paint the picture of villains. I don't know if you have this tweet up right now. Do you?
Yep.
This is somebody who made a very handsome profit while a lot of other people were struggling. He is a member, and this is something I try to remind folks. And we focus a lot on international politics on this show, not just because it's interesting, but because it's important. Because you need to understand that if you are a worker in the United States, you are engaged in the same struggle as workers in Ecuador, in Bolivia, in Brazil. There is a class of elites that are dependent on a system of hyper extraction of your labor and your work and your comrades' work and working people all across the globe to make an insane amount of money while we try to find a way to put food on the table each week. It changes, the intensity from place to place, but it's the same struggle. And this is somebody just like billionaires and trillionaires in the United. Oh, not we don't have trillionaires yet, but we're getting very close to it. Um, in the United States, who did very well during the pandemic when a lot of the rest of us did not do so
Very
well.
well in terms of like earned enough capital to like buy just armies of personnel to do whatever they wanted. Like,
Yeah.
right.
And again, so just because I think we'll probably clip this and put it on YouTube, Andre Soros is a continuation of the Korea Project, which was one of the most incredible projects of like left socialist politics in Latin America that brought millions of people out of poverty, that was incredibly farsighted in its ability to try to engage the poor and working people. And that was a movement that was co opted by Lenin Moreno, who was supposed to be a successor of that movement. That's why he came into power and almost immediately turned his back on that project and has sold the country out to the IMF, is to this day working to privatize as much of the country as possible before a new popular government comes into power. And Leno Moreno, along with U.S. interests and a lot of other seedy actors, is trying to do everything that's possible to make this election more and more difficult for the people's will to be heard. Moreno has recently instituted a massive lockdown in the country because he has failed to protect people from coronavirus, but is now using it as a political tool to try to prevent people from showing up from the ballot box. And Arroz, who was interviewed by Pagina 12, said that Moreno's decision to close down the country generates a clear conflict. The state of exception prohibits the realization of mass events and implies the deployment of the national police and the armed forces in the streets to guarantee citizens' calmness. How is it possible for us to hold elections without the measures affecting the electoral process? And on that question, Rose is 100% right. We all remember Yaku Perez, who was, sort of one of these people who was created in a lab to appeal to American Warrenites and other folks, to undermine the left wing, the actual material, structural left wing candidate, and to replace that with slogans. He was not successful at uprooting Rose. So now it is a competition between a right wing banker and a left-wing economist who's trying to fight to do something different. And do you have this this tweet real quick, because it's mine. Sorry, I'll not to indulge
Gotcha.
myself too much, but it's not worth looking at the. I mean, read it if you're interested. But the Guardian, in their great tradition now of standing up against progress in Latin America, put out a piece that was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It doesn't really get any better than that. That try to conflate Andreas Arauz with Lasso. And it's an exceptionally disgusting thing to do because, basically they interviewed a couple of professors in the country to say, oh, well, neither of these, candidates are doing enough on their platforms to talk about LGBTQ rights, right? Let's just drop that for a second to talk to just say to people, it is absurd. It is absurd to compare Lasso with Arauz on this question. Lasso is somebody who thinks that women who are raped and try to have an abortion should be thrown in prison. Arauz, on the other hand, is running on a platform that says that he wants all mothers in the country to be paid $1,000 to help out their family and their community during this campaign. I'm sorry, to compare either of these two people on their feminist credentials is just absurd and is pandering to the worst U.S. audience, which is so quick to condemn any kind of actual structural movement in the United States because it doesn't appeal to their kind of sensibilities on these kind of questions. It's just I don't know. It's absolutely absurd. The top line is this, though. Every poll that we've seen shows that Arauz should be able to win the election by a large margin, and hopefully Sunday should be a day of celebration. But we're seeing their kind of last ditch attempts to try to make sure that people can't show the vote, which they've been trying to do from the get-go.
Yeah, I'm just a little bit taken aback by the what, like the LGBT washing, or I mean, using
A
that
weird
channel, right?
strategy.
As
Yeah.
I mean, it's an optimistic view of it shows that like these are the channels that the frequency people tap in on, and they are like people want liberation, and so they look at liberation upon certain lines, right? And so you have these you need to jam those with your, if you have an environmentalist that can take the pro OAS lines, right? You need to have someone there, or like the elite, or like the imperial structure needs to have somebody there squatting on these actual like issues.
Yeah.
In a way, yeah, you hope that people are starting to realize that a little bit more. And I think
And the point there is not that those struggles in these countries is not important.
Right.
The point is that why is an English language publication trying to pump up this message to you in the United States with funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation?
Right.
Like, that's the question. It's not even a question about what the politics are in Ecuador. It's why are they trying to create a scenario where you are thinking that a serious right wing, like far right winger, and a progressive socialist are somehow comparable on these questions.
And it's to create attitudes so if something happens, you don't care.
Exactly. And that's what that article is about, and that's what We saw in Bolivia too.